And we are recording and we are on Facebook Live. I'd like to welcome everybody to CWRAP, where we have conversations with Rotary Action people. And today we have as our guest, Alex Agnew. You'll see him there. His name is Sailing Ships Maine on his window, but I'm going to give you a very brief introduction for Alex. He's a co-founder, current president of Sailing Ships Maine. He served as the chair of Iberdrola USA Tall Ships in Portland in 2015, a tall ships festival with public participation of more than 60,000 people. He's also served a couple of terms on the board of directors of American Sail Association, now known as Tall Ships America. He's currently serving a second term on the board of Oliver Hazard Perry, Rhode Island. He's interested in Sailing Ships Maine as a vehicle for introducing students and educators to the transformative effects of ocean sailing. And with that, we are going to ask everybody if you'll just put your name and Rotary Club in the chat. And if you do have questions as we go along, just put them in the chat. And Alex will give a presentation. We'll have time at the end to answer those questions. So Alex, welcome. I'd like to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm super excited to be getting outside my little hole in my office here in Portland, Maine. I'm gonna screen share and show you a picture. So this is, I hope you can all see, this is schooner Harvey Gambit. People able to see that, I hope. We take high school students out to sea for what we consider to be the life-changing experience of being out at sea at night. We don't do 2-hour day sails. We take people out for a minimum of 5 nights. We go from 5 nights up to 65 nights. We feel that getting kids away from home, away from we take the kids' phones away right when they get on the ship. They become part of the crew of the ship immediately, which means they get, first thing as soon as they throw their sea bags into their bunks, everybody has an overnight bunk. They come on deck and they start their safety training. So they get right away the idea that they have an important role to play. After we do group muster and we teach them at least an hour of basic safety right off the bat, we break them into 3 watches. So the kids stand watch 24/7. We take 23 kids at a time. We call them kids, they're high school students. We call them sail trainees. We don't require any experience whatsoever. They can know absolutely nothing. They don't even have ever had to seen the ocean before. And we've had quite a few who've never seen the ocean when they show up. So they get on board, but right away, there's 10 professional crew. We have a captain, a cook, an engineer, 3 mates, and 3 or 4 deckhands, depending on the length of the program. And those young people, often, except for the captain, are people who are studying to get their licenses. Unfortunately, the Harvey Gambit is the only year-round high school sail training program in USA, which is a really sad statement to make. So it's very important that we keep this going. We absolutely adore South Carolina, especially Charleston. We look forward to learning more about different ports in South Carolina. We just left there. We were there for an overnight. We've spent quite a bit of time there, and one of our reasons that we go to South Carolina is because of the warm welcome that we get, but also because we hope that by creating a culture of sail training and high school sailing education in South Carolina, that we will help create a future for your own local schooner, the Spirit of South Carolina. She's been, as you know, may know, she's been sort of sitting at the dock for the last couple of years. And we're sad about that. So in addition to operating schooner Harvey Gambit, which you see in front of you, we hope that at some point soon, Spirit of South Carolina will be the second large sail training vessel operating year-round for high school students. So that's a dream of mine. There are a whole lot of traditional schooners. You're looking at a schooner. There are a whole lot of traditional schooners in the US, but they've all gotten away from educating kids because it's expensive, requires a lot of, the insurance is expensive. There's just a whole bunch of reasons why it's difficult, which is why we're dedicated to making sure it continues to happen. Take a pause there, and we did in the past, it's been an experience mainly reserved for the lucky or the wealthy, mostly the wealthy. We have tried to change that. So this past January, we were in Charleston and we boarded 14 essentially wealthy kids with 9 kids that were on scholarship that also happened to all be kids of color. And they had no idea what they were getting into. And they had never sailed. They had never really left their home city of their home areas of Rhode Island for the most part. But one day their head of school said, "Hey, you want to sign up and go sailing to warm climates in the winter?" And that was pretty much all they knew. So just for fun, I'm going to show you a video of what these kids said after their trip. And I hope this works. Please. Oh, there we go. All right, here we go.
Here we go.
Okay, thanks.
So Sailing Maine Ships, they partnered with Proctor and the Met High School, and it was an experience about learning about the slave trade, and we got to go to many different places such as Charleston, South Carolina, Brunswick, Georgia, St. Augustine, Key West, Florida, St. Petersburg, Florida, Pensacola, Mobile, Alabama, Montgomery, and Selma. And it was just a really great opportunity, and learning about African American history is so important because I feel like everybody needs to learn about this history.
I feel like I got to learn a lot about myself and the things that I like while I was on the boat, so I feel like it was a really good experience to take.
There was a few classes we take marine science, nautical science, and like charting and everything like that on maps. So there was many things that we focused on, mainly on the boat and like things about the ocean.
I learned a lot actually, but it was a great experience. But we went to a lot of places like the Dry Tortugas. We went to the last day was Alabama, and it was just a great experience. We also went to like Pensacola, and there was a lot of places like Key West.
I seen dolphins and bioluminescence, and bioluminescence is like where the water like sparkles, and it's just like it's so beautiful, and all you can see is dolphins, and it's just going by you really fast and everything, and there was like a whole pod of them, so it was just so beautiful. It like really made my day.
I really like sailing. It was like one of those things where I didn't think I would enjoy it, but even now I'm looking for like summer sailing jobs.
One of my favorite things to do on there was just getting to really learn about myself and just explore the different types of places that we got to explore.
I don't know, like there was a time where like I just like wanted to break from everything here, so that's why my focus was kind of like going on that trip, kind of straying away from everything here, needing a break, and then being on the boat just made me realize how much you should be, should be thankful for everything you have here, and how hard other people have it sometimes. It's changed me also in a way of like having a different mindset of like I want to do more hands-on work. I like get so, what's the word? Like I get tired from sitting down a lot now because I always want to do something now because there was always something to do on the boat. So having a good working mindset also changed me.
The most challenging part was probably the seasickness and not being able to, like, wishing we had more support.
I'm never gonna do this again. It's like a once in a lifetime experience. And the thoughts of going home is only temporary. Like I'm not gonna be on the boat forever. It's like one of those things where I just had to realize like what I'm doing. I had to like ground myself. I had to humble myself a bit.
At the beginning, waking up would be, I don't know, terrible, like you really want to wake up because everything was new. But once you started progressing through the program, everything just was more fun because you understood how everything worked on the boat. So it was a breeze.
At first it was kind of awkward because there were random people, and also from the med kids, like I didn't know them at all, so it was like kind of awkward, but we got to like know each other. We started like speaking, started like like having conversations, like just randomly talking, and I pretty much got close to like a lot of people on the boat, from Proctor and the Met, which is kind of cool. So yeah, for me it was fine.
Getting to really know different types of people and places, like going to places with different types of people, and just getting to adapt to new places and environments wherever you are.
Learning about sailing is like amazing because it's like, who would have ever thought that you know how to steer a boat? You know what I mean? So yeah, it was a good experience.
I was pretty much always all hands. Like I love learning, so I was always like yeah, I'll do it. But yeah, I wasn't really complaining about something. No.
I would do it again for another time. If it was like for a week or two, not for 2 months, but maybe for 2 months if it was on like a different boat.
I like the whole sailing part, but I'll still be like kind of hesitant to just do it again. So I'm not sure about that.
I think going on that boat was like really awesome. And as I mentioned, I really wanted to go home, but now that like I'm home, I kind of want to go back on this boat.
I'd love to do it again. Maybe a shorter time, like 2 weeks, maybe a month even. Having more communication with family from outside of the boat. But other than that, I'd love to do it again.
I would definitely do it again. Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It was a good time.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you have, just curious, that was 5 minutes of student reaction. Do you have any reaction to the student reaction? What did you think of that?
I thought it was very interesting. They loved it. But then again, 2 months, seasickness. Oh my goodness. That might be tough to go back to. But I heard them say, maybe go back for a couple of weeks, that sort of thing. Kids were great. So they were selected by the high school and then they were on scholarship for the 2 months. Is that how it worked?
Yes, those were the scholarship kids that you saw. We've been doing this now for about 6 or 7 years. And when you ask any normal high school kid, how would you like to go sailing on a tall ship? The answer is always, head down, move away. You're something wrong with you. You're screwy. I mean, literally, you cannot talk a kid into this. So we were like, well, what do we do? How do we, except for a very unusual kid. but we had to figure out a different way of recruiting because our mission is to get the kids out there. And even if it's a week or if it's 65 days, it's just, but it has to be a few days because the first night is awful. They're seasick, they're scared. They do not enjoy the first night. The heads are basically not that nice. It's very, very rustic. It's really a hard life. You're up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You work really, really hard. The food's great, but there's really no creature comforts. You have a bunk. When you first see it, it's like, I don't know about spending a week or 65 days in this bunk. Do you notice none of those kids complained about their bunks, about the heads, about the hardship, or very little? So they made this amazing adjustment to a really hard life. And that wasn't even what they wanted to talk about. So that's kind of what we're trying to focus on. The results are that the kids learn to cope with, a pretty shitty existence out at sea. It's really hard. And yet it's mind-blowingly cool, and they learn a ton of stuff. So they have to learn 51 ropes, lines, we call them. They have to know a very detailed hourly safety check, a boat check. So every single compartment, of which there are 8, they have to crawl down inside and actually measure the height of the water that's in the bilge every hour so that we know exactly how much water we have on board and how fast it's coming in. They have to enter a very detailed log entry every hour when they're on watch, which has barometric pressure, wind direction, wind speed, boat speed, all these numbers that are really annoying to try to collect. So back to the recruiting piece, what we've figured out is that if you make it part of their school, that then they don't question it. They just say, oh, okay, it's part of school, so it must be okay, or it must be. And then the other thing we did was we figured out a way to provide them academic credit. So every single student who goes out gets academic credit. If they go out for 5 nights, they get what we call a nautical science credit. And that is a transferable letter of credit that comes from our local high school, but that can also be offered by your high schools. So, so our 65-day programs, they get 6 credits. They get a math credit, a biological science credit, which is a combination of oceanography and meteorology. They get an English credit because there's a lot of technical writing and there's a lot of technical reading. And then there's also, we read a few chapters of Moby Dick. So that's the English credit. The history credit is whenever we stop, we go to these amazing history museums. And plus we're living history on the ship. So we're talking constantly. The Harvey Gambit, the ship, is a 19th century lumber, pickup truck, basically. She was the pickup truck of the 19th century. So see if I can put this back up. Can I share my screen again with a picture of the ship?
Sure.
There, share screen. There it is. Okay. Can you see it?
Not yet. There it
Sorry.
comes.
Okay, so Harvey Gambit, she's 131 feet long from the tip of the bowsprit, which is can you see my cursor?
Yes.
That's the bowsprit. This is what's called the head rig. Students are allowed to go out into the head rig, which is a wild, scary experience. This is 95 tons of ship following you, and you're right in front of it. It's a really cool but scary experience. Kids wear harnesses both at night and when they're out in this head rig. It takes them a while to get up the courage to go out here. We have 3 3 jibs, a foresail, a mainsail. This is the main boom. We have 3 small boats on board. So whenever we anchor, by the way, the anchor is a manual anchor. And I'll try to show you, if we have a little time, I can show you kids lifting the anchor. It's a 500-pound, there's 2 500-pound anchors, and the kids raise them manually. So it's quite a job. When they go to put these sails up, it takes about 6 people minimum to put up the main. We'd prefer 10. So you get them, the kids get the idea that everything is done by teamwork. When we anchor, oh, here you can see a fishing line. So we pretty much had a line out the whole time and caught some fresh fish. But there's 3 small boats. Here's one right here. There's another here, and there's one you can't see over on the port side. When we anchor, the kids get in the small boats and they learn how to drive an outboard. They learn how to row. They learn how to sail. So there's a whole bunch of, hands-on educational experience. But when they're on the ship, they're learning also about engineering. We have a main engine. We have 4 engines on the boat. We have a fire pump. We have the main engine. We have a generator. And I always forget what the 4th one is. Oh no, there's only 3. Some ships have an engine to pull the anchor up, but we pull it up by hand. Okay, so why don't I pause there and look at the. How am I doing? Should I keep going, or what you want me to stop?
You got about 5 minutes or so, so we might want to open it up for questions. I do see there's a couple of questions in the chat, and then others, I'm sure we'll think of them as we go along. So did you sort of trick them to go on board? I mean, you said it was sort of like a school program and hello, bring your gear, and oh my, here you are. How'd you do that?
Really glad you put it that way, because that's exactly how I put it. I feel like we do trick them. Those 9 kids that you saw in that video, they were completely tricked. They had no idea what was happening. The other kids have been thinking about going on this program since they were like 8 years old. Their families have been said, you're going to go to Proctor Academy and you're going to go on Ocean Classroom, because that's what I did. Kids of color, had no idea this was coming. We approached them on the 1st of November, and on the 3rd of January, they're getting on an airplane and flying to Charleston. And I met them in Charleston at the airport, and they didn't know each other. They were from 6 different campuses. So they all belong to a school called MET, which is an experiential learning high school in Providence, Rhode Island. It's actually all over Rhode Island. There's campuses in Newport and Warwick and different places. So they didn't even know each other. And by the end, not only were they best friends, but they're really close to the kids from Proctor Academy, because they all lived together. They stood watch together. And we've done 4 semesters at sea. Actually, we've been doing semesters at sea for more than 28 years. This particular school partnership is a 28-year-old partnership. They sailed on Harvey Gambit 28 years ago and have been doing it pretty much ever since. So there's this long tradition there. But for MET, this was our first year with MET. So MET School, high school, an experiential learning school in Providence, is our partner for the winter program. But we have about 20 different school partners. And I've been looking around Charleston and trying to find a school partner in Charleston. We have done a program with Ashley Hall School. We've done that twice now, where we took 20 girls out. And you remember the week that Texas froze and they lost all their power? Well, 20 girls were out sailing on Harvey Gambit that week. It was quite tough. A lot of seasickness, and by the end, they didn't want to get off. They were all crying. They didn't want to go home. So it is an amazing experience. You get over the seasickness, you get over the fear, and and you just want to keep going with the experience. So yes, we trick them, And it's an old maritime thing. In the old days, they used to recruit labor. They didn't ask people if they wanted to work on a ship. They got them drunk, hit them over the head, put them in a sack, and they woke up 3 days later out at sea. We don't quite go to that extreme, but we do try to encourage kids to stay with their group, stay with their class, not, and then, so anyway, sorry, but I'm fascinated by the problem of how to get kids, high school kids especially, to do things outside their comfort zone. That is what I do. And that is what I hope that the Rotary Club, your Rotary Club, will help us with, will help us to find visionary leaders who have students who can say, we're going to do this, let's go. And so we have multiple empty weeks during the course of the year. We're going to be in Charleston again, approximately from Thanksgiving to Christmas. And we'd really love to take your kids out during that time. I think the International African American Museum is going to open up around then. We hope to be part of that celebration. We're really excited about that. So, okay.
So one of the other questions is, do you track to see how many go into careers that are maritime related and how many sign up again? Are they allowed to come back on board for another semester at sea or another week or two?
Well, we really want them to come back as crew. So that's our path, is to try to get them to come back as crew. Now, after 5 days, yes, we would like them to come back. And we have not done a good job of tracking their careers. We know that a lot of them go off to maritime academies. One of the reasons we're a high school program is we want to let them know about the maritime academies. There are 6 maritime academies: Maine Maritime, Mass Maritime, Texas A&M, Great Lakes Maritime Academy, Cal Maritime, the New York's Fort Schuyler, New York Maritime Academy, and then the last one is the federally subsidized Kings Point. So there are all these academies that they can go to, and they're not all free, but if they have, once you go through those academies, the jobs are amazing. But there's so many different jobs. There's jobs in education. We try to get kids to think about being outdoor experiential educators. There's history, science, obviously boat construction, going to sea. So there's just all these different jobs that are, and the pay is usually really high and the opportunities are great. So for example, a cook makes twice as much cooking in the maritime industry as they do on land, more than twice as much. And they get half their weekends free and half of their nights free because they only work 6 months of the year, and they still make twice as much as you make working year round in a Charleston restaurant where you have to work nights and weekends your whole life. So it's a much better route. That's an example for a cook. So anyway, sorry to go on so long.
No, that's okay. So we're going to wrap it up here in just a moment. But one of the other questions I'm sure everybody wants to know is, what is the cost and what are the destinations? And I did notice on your website that I saw a cost of $15,000 for a semester at sea, but you called the experience you just showed us a scholarship. So there must be a way that these costs are covered in some part if folks can't afford it.
Yeah, so I like to ask the people who are recruiting the kids to just recruit the kids. And the people who are raising the money, just to raise the money. But don't make the people who are recruiting the kids raise the money. So we like to say that we don't leave anybody behind. Now, with a $15,000 semester at sea, it is, we can't really say we're taking everybody. So we, in the case of the 9 kids from Providence, we raised the money, all of it. Now we did have a nice piece of support from Turner Construction. That's the company that built the African American Museum in Charleston. So we did get a grant from them, and we hope they'll renew. But it's my job, and with the help, hopefully, of volunteers, to raise the money. But somebody else's job, and this is that we don't have anything to raise money for if we can't get the students. So our typical retail price for 1 week at sea is $1,500. But the last time we had a really big summer program before the pandemic, 75% of the kids paid zero. All of the funds were covered by others. For example, well, the Sea Cadets, which is Navy funded, those kids actually paid $250. But 75% of our kids paid nothing because we raised the money in other ways. So we're not trying to penalize families who can't afford this experience. We will have a spring semester a year from now. Right now, in a year, we're going to have a spring semester, and we will have 10 scholarship slots on that semester. And I have to go raise that money, and I'm happy to do it because I know it's going to change 10 lives.
So where will those scholarship slots come from? Will they come from Rhode Island? Will they come from Maine? Will they come from Charleston? Do you have any plan for how those slots would be allocated?
None whatsoever.
Okay.
I really hope they come from Charleston. That would be fantastic. We don't have any pro-Maine bias. We call ourselves Sailing Ships Maine because we started here. Our ship was built here, but we're a completely national organization right now. And actually, most of our kids don't come from Maine, and we don't really care where the kids come from. That's a terrible thing to say, but you do. We'll take your kids. But from our point of view, we're just trying to make sure we impact the kids' lives, and we want to fill the ship every time we go out. So we often have empty berths.
For us to help do this, what we would need is, do you have some type of a flyer that we could use and present in our clubs, take into the schools, and see if we can get kids interested? We won't try to trick them, but we will try to give them sort of the basic information. And one other curious question: don't you give them seasickness pills the first day, or you want them to go through that?
I don't really want them to go through that, but it's the biggest challenge, not just in their minds, but it's what makes them so happy is that they live through it. You know, it's kind of weird. They think somehow they're going to die getting seasick or something, you know, and it's not rational, but it's part of what, and I've seen this for 30, 40 years. It's part of what people feel proudest about is that they got sick and they got over it. So I think it's a weird piece of what makes this a resilience building experience. So they can take all the seasick medication they want. You know, we don't allow crazy stuff, but we will give it to them if they ask for it. But I don't really think any of it really works. I think what really works is just getting over it and the weather changing. You know,
okay, so can you give us some type of document, brochure, handout that you could send to Mary, and then she in turn can distribute it? We can get big distribution. I share your concerns about trying to recruit kids to do programs. If you see my background, you see Rotary Youth Exchange. This is high school students going abroad for a full school year. And I chair that for our district. And we have 15 inbounds, 15 outbounds every year. And it is indeed a challenge to find clubs, parents, et cetera, to do this sort of program. So you were sharing some of the same thoughts I have relative to the difficulties sometimes in running these sort of programs. Let's see if we have any other questions. I don't see any in the chat. If anybody has anything, you can just unmute yourself. Otherwise, we'll thank Alex for very interesting program. You don't have many kids at a time, but I'm sure you've had a tremendous impact on their lives.